So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over some GCSE Maths revision based around ratio, proportion, rates of change, exam questions taken from the foundation tier. Now before we get started, a little reminder that a copy of the questions is available for you to download by click on the link in the description, and it is something that I strongly recommend you do. Have a go at these questions to see how well you do on these questions, and you can also mark your answers. And obviously then if you get stuck on any particular questions, then obviously feel free to continue watching this video as we go through the answers. Now the reminder that if you haven't got access to print or to have a go at the questions just as an exam paper, then all you need to do is just simply pause the video as I read through the answers, have attempts at the question on the screen, and then unpause as I go through the answer. Now along in the description I'll also include a topic breakdown so you can see which question refers to which topic. So if there is a question that you're not quite sure of, you can refer to the question breakdown, see what topic it is, and then maybe review or revise that topic before having a go at the question again. I'll also include a link that takes you to the 162 Maths contents page for easy access to lots of lesson tutorials over all the topics in maths at all the most key stages, and also a set of revision content including past paper walkthroughs, all the rest of the audits, and obviously some topic tests as well. So let's get started on question 1. So question 1 says, what is 680 millimeters in centimeters? And it says to circle our answer. So for this we just need to remember that to get from millimeters to centimeters we need to divide by 10 because there are 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter. So here I'm going to do 680 divided by 10. So when divided by 10 you just move the decimal point one place to the left to make it smaller. So the correct answer I want to circle is the third one. For question 2, it says Samir and Dan run a race. Samir finishes in 2.5 minutes and Dan finishes in 130 seconds. And the question is asking us to complete the following sentence. So we want to say who wins and by how many seconds. So for this, as you can see, we've got two different sets of units, and what we want to try and do when comparing is you want to try and convert it so that they are both in the same units. Now, because they want the answer or the difference in seconds, it makes more sense for us to convert both times into seconds than it would be to convert into minutes. So really the only one that I need to convert is going to be Samir's. So 2.5 minutes is another way of saying 2.5 minutes. And there are 60 seconds in 1 minute, so that's going to be, so 2 minutes is going to be 60 plus 60, and in half a minute there are 30 seconds. So if I just do 60 plus 60 plus 30, that's going to give me an answer of 150 seconds. So then the two times I need to compare are 150 and 130. So who wins? It's going to be Dan, and by 20 seconds. Moving on to question 3, we've got another conversion question. So it's to convert 2.5 kilograms into grams. Now to convert kilograms into grams, all we need to do is multiply by 1000. The reason for that is because there are 1000 grams in a kilogram. So again, with 2.5 or 2.5, I'm going to write that as 2.5 times 1000. So here we're going to move the decimal point 3 places. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3. Now we fill in the empty gaps with zeros. So the correct answer we want to circle again is the third option. Moving on to question 4, it says their car travels 3.5 miles in 5 minutes. Work out the average speed in miles per hour. Now when working with speed, it's always really important that you check the units. So here we want our distance in miles, which it is, and we want our time in hours, which in this case we've got 5 minutes. Now to convert minutes into hours, all we need to do here is divide by 60. So here from this what we've then got is 5 divided by 60, which if I write as a fraction gives us 5 over 60, and I can simplify that as 1 over 12. So it's going to be 1/12 of an hour. So then to work out speed, it's distance over time. So to work out the speed, it's going to be the distance, which is 3.5, divided by 1/12, and then all I then need to do is type that into my calculator. Now again, when using your calculator, make sure you're using it correctly. So here I've got 3.5 divided by, and then I press my fraction button of 1 over 12, press equals, and it comes up with an answer of 42 miles per hour. Moving on to question 5, it says that a solid piece of silver has a mass of 2.625 kilograms and a volume of 250 centimeter cubed. Work out the density of the piece of silver. Give your answer in grams per cubic centimeter. Now the units are really important when answering density questions. So here we want, if I write down the formula, so density is equal to mass over volume. So here I want my mass in grams and I want my volume in centimetre cube. So here the volume is fine, but here the mass is in kilograms, not in grams. So first thing I need to do is convert 2.625 kilograms into grams. So again, just like the previous question, I just need to multiply by 1000, which gives me 2625 grams. And then it's just a case of putting it into the formula. So here I'm going to have that density equals, and it's going to be mass, which is 2625, divided by 250. And if I type that into my calculator, I get an answer of 10.5. Then moving on to our next question. It says, question 6, it says that a map of an island is shown on a centimetre grid. A, B and C are houses. And question 6a is saying the actual distance between A and B is 1500 metres. Show that the scale of the map is 1 to 30,000. Now for this, what we need to do first is first of all measure the distance of A to B in centimetres. Now I can count the kind of squares, but I can see that A to B is equal to 5 centimetres. Now I know that 5 centimetres, as it tells me, is the actual distance of 1500 metres. Now when looking at scales of a map, the units need to be the same. So for this, what I need to do is convert 1500 metres into centimetres. So 1500, so metres to centimetres is I need to multiply by 100. Because again, there is 100 centimetres in a metre. So for this, what I need to do is multiply this number by 100, in which I get 5 centimetres is going to equal 150000 centimetres. And then what I then need to do is now simplify this. So now if I divide both these two sides by 5, I'm going to get an answer of 1 centimetre equals, oh, not 15, it's going to be 15 divided by 5 is 3, so it's going to be 3000 centimetres, which equals 1 to 30,000, as it wanted me to show. Then moving on to 6b, it says work out the actual distance between A to C. So for this, what I then need to do is with a ruler, I need to measure A to C. Now this could be done in a couple of ways. Now I'm going to basically just use my ruler and just basically measure. Again, this is going to be a little bit fiddly using it on here. So what I would do is I'd get a ruler and measure this distance here. Now you could use a ruler, you could also use Pythagoras if you're really wanting to show off your maths. But this distance here, I would say if you've printed on A4, which is going to be ideal because that's what your exam paper is going to be measured at. If you're doing it on A5, it's going to be slightly different if you've got a photocopied or a reduced value, but this is 4.5 centimetres. Then, so knowing that A to B is 4.5, so A to C, sorry, equals 4.5 centimetres. I now need to use that scale to then work out what it is. So for this, if I look at the scale, I need to, for every centimetre is equal to 30,000 centimetres. So if I multiply this by 30,000, I get an answer of 135,000 centimetres. Now what's left for me to then do is convert this into kilometres. So this value here in metres, so if I divide that by 100, that's going to give me 1350 metres. And then if I want to convert that into kilometres, I need to divide that by 1000, which is then going to give me my answer of 1.35 kilometres. And there is my final answer. Now, depending on your measuring and depending on whether you've used Pythagoras, now again, if I was to use Pythagoras, let me just go and quickly show you how you would do that, is you turn this into a right angle triangle. This length here is 2, that distance there is going to be 4, and then this distance here is going to be x. So x squared equals 2 squared plus 4 squared, so x equals the square root of 4 plus 16, so x equals the square root of 20. So again, you could then work out what x is there and then use the scale to work it out. It's entirely up to you. But for B, they would accept any answers with working that are between 1.32 to 1.38 would be an acceptable answer. But again, if you just measured it with a ruler and you're roughly getting 4.5 centimeters, then your answer should be relatively close to the one that you can see on your screen. Moving on to question 7, it says, at a wedding there are a total of 105 guests, 19 more adult guests than there are child guests. What proportion of the guests are adults? Now for this, it is important that we kind of use a bit of algebra for this. So if I look, just have a little heading of adults and I have children. So here it says that there are 19 more adult guests than children. So if children are x, then the number of adults is going to be x plus 19. Now it tells me, using the first bit of information that it tells me in the question, that there are a total of 105 guests. So if I add these two numbers up, it should give me an answer of 105. Now if I take this expression that I've written, so here I'm going to end up with 2x plus 19 equals 105. Then I get 2x equals, and I solve this equation by taking away 19, I get 2x equals 86. So x equals 43. Now if x equals 43, that means that there are 43 children, and 43 plus 19 is 62. So here I can then work out what the proportion of adult guests are children. So it's going to be 62 over 105. And I don't think I can simplify that, so I can either write it as a fraction, or you can write it as a decimal, in which you'll get an answer of 0.5904 blah blah blah. And again, if you want to round it, if you have rounded your answer, always make sure you've stated what you've rounded it to. Moving on to question 8, it says that a company sells items online and in the shop. The chart shows information about its sales, and question 8a says the table shows the sales in 2011, and the question is asking us to show the information of the 2011 sales on the chart. So for this, we can see that the vertical scale is looking at percentages. So what I want to do is I want to convert these two amounts of the online sales and the shop into a percentage. So let me just have a heading of a percentage. So to work out this percentage here, what I need to do is do the number of online sales, which is 152, divide that by the grand total, which is 200, and multiply that by 100, in which I'll get an answer of 76%. Now if that online shop is 76%, then the shop sales is going to be 24%, and that is what I then want to show on this scale. So as you can see, the shop is at the bottom, so that's going to be 24%. So for this, I need to find 24%. And again, let's be a bit accurate with this. Doesn't matter what colour. So I want to try and keep the space as it is. So I'm counting 5 blocks. Hopefully yours will definitely be a lot more accurate than mine. And I'm going to go all the way up to 100, like so. And I'm going to try and convert this into a box somehow, like so. And if I just copy that, oh, what's happened there? Nope. There we go. So let's try this again. So here, if I just convert that into a box, I should have done this one first. And I'll tweak around with it. Should be okay. And just move that across a little bit and down a little bit. There we go. So there's our overall box, and we want the shop sales, which was 24%. So what I need to do is find 24%. So each little box is roughly around 2%, because it's going up in 5. So there's 20%. So I want 2 squares above, which is about there. And then all I then need to do is just shade in this box. Again, the shading is not imperative, as long as you can see that line. And the online sales is going to be 76%. So this marker here should be 24%. If I'm slightly off, please excuse me, it's a bit difficult on the computer. Moving on to question 8b, it says work out the ratio of the online sales to the shop sales in 2008. So for this, if going looking at 2008, we can see that it's 80 to 20%. So here the shop, or we want online to the shop, so it's 20 to 80. And then all I then need to do is simplify this ratio. So divide both numbers by 10 gives me 2 to 8. Dividing both numbers by 2, I get 1 to 4. Moving on to question 9, it says in a field the number of sheep to the number of cows is 10 to 3. It says Zach says there are 10 sheep in the field. Give a reason why Zach could be wrong. Now again, there's a couple of reasons for this, and again, if yours differs to the one that I'm going to be stating, which is probably the most common ones, please do check out the mark scheme to see if they will allow your answer. But I would say that here, a possible reason why Zach could be wrong is that the ratio may have been simplified, and they would also give you a mark for giving an example. So you could say that there might be 20 sheep, something along those lines, and you could also state something along the lines of that when you've given a ratio, it doesn't actually tell you the actual totals. It could obviously be simplified, so something along those lines would be absolutely fine for that one single mark. Then moving on to 9b, it says in a different field the number of goats to the number of pigs is 13 to 4. Priya says that there are more than 3 times as many goats as pigs. Is she correct? And we want to tick one box. Now again, for these, try and opt for doing your working out first before ticking the box. I really do get annoyed by the exam boards setting out questions like this. It should be a case of showing you working out first before ticking a box, because sometimes you probably make an assumption, tick a box, and then show the working out to prove it, which may ultimately be wrong. So here, what we want to do is work out the proportion. So here we look at the total number of goats, which is 13, over the number of goats, which is 4, and then that's going to be 6.5 divided by 2, which is going to give me 3.25. So as you can see, that's more than 3, so 3.25 is greater than 3. So is Priya correct? Yes, she is. Now moving on to question 10, it says the cost of a holiday is £2,400. Rana pays a deposit followed by monthly payments in the ratio of the deposit to the total monthly payments is equal to 3 to 5. She makes 6 equal monthly payments, and the question is asking us to work out her monthly payments. So for this, what we need to do first is first of all work out how much is the deposit and how much the total monthly payments is going to be before we work out what the 6 monthly payments are going to be. So for this, we know that the total is 2,400, and looking at the ratio of 3 to 5, it tells us that 2,400 is equal to 8 parts. Now if that is the case, we could then work out what one part is by dividing by 8. So if I divided both sides by 8, it tells me that one part is going to equal £300. Now using this bit of information here, I can then work out the deposit and the total monthly payment. So here the deposit, let's not use yellow because it might be difficult to see. So the deposit equals 3 parts, which is going to be 3 times 300, which gives me an answer of £900. And the total monthly payments is equal to 5 parts, which is equal to 5 times 300, which is equal to £1,500. Now for this, we want to split that into 6 monthly payments. So if I then do 1,500 divided by 6, that's going to give me an answer of £250. So the final answer we want to write then is 250. Moving on to question 11, it says 3 teams A, B and C play in a competition. The games won by A to the games won by B is in the ratio of 2 to 1, and the games won by B to the games won by C is 3 to 1. Team B has won 6 games in total. How many games have the 3 teams won? Now for this is about combining ratios together. Now for this, if we write A to B to C, now if you're not sure about these questions, a little reminder that I've got a contents page which includes videos and lesson tutorials that go through all of these particular topics from scratch. So if you are completely bamboozled by what I'm doing, be sure to check out the lesson, get yourself reviewed and revised up onto that particular topic before tackling these types of questions, and also for it to make more sense. So for this, we've got the first ratio, which is A to B, which is in the ratio of 2 to 1. So if I write 2 to 1, and then using the second bit of information, which is the ratio of B to C, I've got 3 to 1. Now for this, what we want to do is we want to Now, because the information it tells me that Team B won 6 games, that I want the middle number to be 6. So looking at this ratio here, if the B value needs to be 6, then I need to multiply this A value by 6, because 1 times 6 gives you 6, so 2 times 6 is going to give you 12. Now looking at the next ratio, this ratio here, that here B is equal to 3, but I want B to equal 6, so that means I need to times by 2. So if I times that by 2, I'm going to get 1 times 2, which is 2. And now you can see I've now got my little ratio here where B is 6, and that represents the actual numbers that B has won. So here the total number of games won is going to equal 12 plus 6 plus 2, which gives me an answer of 20. Moving on to question 12, it says Millie has an equal number of 20 pence coins and 50 pence coins. The value of her 20 pence coins is £2.80. Work out the total value of her 20 pence and 50 pence coins. So for this, what we need to do first is work out how many 20p coins does she have. So using this bit of information here, we know that £2.80 is the total of how many 20 pences coins there are. So to work out how many coins there are, we just need to do 2.8 divided by 0.2, which gives us an answer of 14 coins. Now again, if this was a non-calculator question, again, if I had 2.8 divided by 0.2, I multiply both sides by, or the numerator and the denominator, by 10, so I get 28 divided by 2, and that gives me 14. So there I've got 14 coins. So now to work out the total amount of 50p's rather, then that's going to be 14 times 0.5, because remember that Millie has an equal number of 20p coins and 50p coins, and that's going to come up to a total of £7. So her total value, which is what the question is asking, is going to be the total of the 20 pence coins, which is £2.80, plus the total of the 50 pence coins, which is £7, which gives me a grand total of £9.80. Moving on to question 13, it says Joe and Kyle share an amount of money in the ratio of 7 to n. Joe gets 35% of the money. Work out the value of n. Now for this, ratio can represent the proportion, and proportion can be represented as either a fraction, a decimal, or a percentage. So here, if I just go back to there, so here I've got Joe and Kyle, and I've got the ratio of 7 to n when I want to work out the value of n. Now using this bit of information here, that if Joe gets 35%, then obviously total percentage is 100, so Kyle is going to get 65%. So all I then need to do is just basically simplify, get this ratio to look like this one here. So here, to get from 35 to 7, I need to divide by 5. So here, to find out n, I just need to divide 65 by 5. So n equals 13, and that there is the answer for that one. Moving on to question 14, it says the counters in a bag are red or blue. 1/5 of the counters are red. Work out the ratio of red counters to blue counters. Circle your answer. Now, in terms of looking at how fractions differ to ratios, is with a ratio you're comparing one part to another. With a fraction you're comparing one part to the grand total. So here, if the number of red counters is 1/5, then that means that there's going to be a total of 5, and the number of red discs is 1, so that's the number of red discs. Now if a counter only includes red and blue, then that means that if there's only one red counter and there are 5 counters in total, then that means that there are going to be 4 blue counters. So then one red counter, so then writing this as a ratio, in the ratio of red counters to blue, well, that's going to be 1 to 4, so I need to circle the first option. Moving on to question 15, it says what percentage of this shape is shaded, and we want to give our answer as a percentage. Now for this is just a case of counting squares, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then I've got 2 halves to make that 10, and then we want the total, which is 5 times 5, which is 25, and then if I then convert this fraction into a percentage, so easiest way is to get the denominator over 100, seeing as I've written it as a fraction. So 25 times 4 gives me 100, so 10 times 4 is going to give me 40, and 40 over 100 as a percentage is 40%. Moving on to question 16, it says 500 people started a race. 280 were men and the rest were women. 80% of the men finished the race and 30 women did not finish the race. Complete the frequency tree. And that's what we need to do for this one. So let me just zoom out and hope that the doesn't reset, in which of course it does. And let me just go back to the question. Hope that we've got, I think we've just about got everything there on the screen. Let me just zoom out a touch. So here, let's work out what we know. Now, usually the order in which they give you the information is often the order that you can fill in your frequency tree. So we know that the first bit of information, it tells us that there are 280 men and the rest were women. So here, the number of men is going to be 280. And if there's a total of 500, then to work out this one, so let me just write down what step I'm doing each one. So this one here is going to be 500 minus 280, which is 220. Now, using the second bit of information, it says that 80% of the men that finished, 80% of the men finished the race. So this, what I need to then do is work out 80% of the men. So I need to work out 80% of 280. Now 80% 280, and again we could do this a number of ways. You can either work out what 10% is, then multiply that by 8. You could use decimal multipliers, any which way you want to work it out. So if it is a calculator question, which I think I'd probably assume this one's going to be, to do 0.8 times 280, which gives me an answer of 224, and that's number 3. So I can then work out how many men did not finish, and that's simply going to be doing 280, because that's the total number of men, minus 224, and that gives me an answer of 56. Then using the last bit of information, it then says 30 women did not finish the race. So if I go down to the number of women who did not finish the race, that's going to be 30. And then to work out the number of women who did finish the race, well, if they're 220, so it's going to be 220 minus 30, which gives us an answer of 190. And there we've completed our frequency tree. Then moving into question 17, so let me just zoom in so you can see it a little bit clearer on the screen. It says work out 110% of 80. Now again, loads of different ways in which you can do this. You can use decimal multipliers, you can use percentage scales. So here we can see that if 10% is going to equal 8, then 100% is going to equal 80. And then I just add those numbers up. So that's going to give me 110% plus equals rather 88. And so the answer there is 88. Moving on to question 18, it says that Jack sees a bicycle, and of course it's going to do that. So let's just go back to the question. It says that Jack sees bicycle he wants to buy in 2 shops. We've got bicycles and with a price without VAT of 130 with VAT charged at 20%, and just bikes with the normal price of 195 with a quarter off and VAT is included. And the question is asking us to say which shop is cheaper. So for this, what I need to do is actually work out each of the amounts separately. So for the first one, what we need to do is we need to add 20%. So we need to, first of all, work out 10% of 130, which is 13. So 20% is going to equal 26. So the total price is going to be 130 plus 26, which is £156. Then for the just bikes, what we need to do is take a quarter off. So here we just need to do 195. And again, depending on how you want to do this, we need to divide this by 4 and times this by 3 because you're paying for 3 quarters. Now again, a couple of ways you can do this. You can either say you're getting 25% off. So you can work out what a quarter is, take it away. Or you can just do it, ultimately you can just find a quarter of 195, which is going to give me an answer of, and I just type this into my calculator just to speed things up, gives me an answer of £48.75. So that's going to be the discount amount. Is that, and then all I then need to do to work out the total is going to either be 195 minus 48.75, or you could do 195 times 3 quarters because that's how much you're paying for, or you could do 195 times 0.75, in which, regardless of which calculation you do, the correct answer you're going to get is £146.25. So which one's cheaper? Just Bikes. Serves bicycles right for a poor name. So here I just need to write Just Bikes with a Y. Now looking at question 19, it says I increase a number by 24%. The answer is 6014. What number did I start with? Now there's a couple of ways in which you could do this if you're familiar with decimal multipliers. So here what we're looking for is a reverse percentage question. Now here, when you are working out percentage increase decrease, you are simply multiplying. So when you're doing the reverse of that, we actually need to divide by the decimal multiplier. So for this, to find out what 100% is, we're going to divide 6014 divided by, now an increase of 24%, the decimal multiplier is going to be 1.24. So in this case, to find the original amount, I need to divide by 1.24. And that gives me an answer of 4850. And so another way of working this out, or an alternative way, is if you increase by 24%, then that's going to be 100% plus 24% is equal to 124%. So that's 6014 equals 124%, but you want 100%. So to do that, what we need to do is do 6014 divided by 124, which works out what 1% is, and then I multiply that by 100, and that will give me what 100% is, and again that gives me the same answer of 4850, which makes sense because we're expecting a smaller number because we obviously have increased it. Moving on to question 20, it says the cost of 5 kilograms of potatoes is £3.20 and the cost of half a kilogram of carrots is 29 pence. Work out the total cost of 12 kilograms of potatoes and 1.5 kilograms of carrots. So for this, what we need to do first is work out the two separate amounts. Now here we can see that the cost of 5 kilograms per potatoes is £3.20. Now for this, what you want to do first is work out the cost of 1 kilogram of potatoes. Now for this, what we then need to do is just do 3.2 divided by 5, and that comes up to a total of 64 pence, or 0.64 as it would do on your calculator. So to work out 24 kilograms of potatoes, well, if 1 kilogram of potatoes costs 64 pence, then to work out 12 kilograms, I just need to do 12 multiplied by 0.64. And then moving on to the carrots, well, here we know that half a kilogram of carrots equals 29p. So 1 kg is going to be double that, which is 58 pence. So then if I add those two amounts up, I'm going to get 1.5 kilograms. And adding this up, I get an answer of 87 pence. So for this, all I then need to do is 12 times 0.64, which gives me a total of £7.68, and I've got 87 pence. So if I add those two amounts up, I get an answer of 8.55 or £8.55. Moving on to question 21, it says Beth drives 200 miles for 4 hours. She drives the first 18 miles at an average speed of 36 miles per hour. Work out the average speed of the rest of her journey. Now for this, what we first need to do is work out how long she's actually been driving for in the first part. So for this, using the first bit of information, what we need to do is we need to work out the time. Now, using the formula of distance equals speed over time, or speed times time. And so we just draw the little triangle, so to say. So to work out time, it's going to be distance. Don't know why I've written that, so let me just get rid of it. So here we know that time equals distance over speed. So to work out the distance of the first bit, well, that's going to be the distance, which is 18 miles, divided by the speed, which is 36. And that comes up to a total of 0.5. And because the speed units are in using time of hours, that's going to be 0.5 hours. So that means that the second, so the time of the second part is going to be a total of 4 hours. So it's going to be 4 minus 0.5, which equals 3.5 hours. Now for this, what I can now do is work out speed. So we know that speed is equal to distance divided by time. So the distance we know is going to be, so let me just write, distance of the second part is going to be 200, which was the total, minus 18, which was the first part, and that comes up to 182 miles. So then using these two bits of information here, substituting into this formula, we can see that the speed is going to be equal to 182 divided by 3.5, and if I type that into my calculator, I get an answer of 52 miles per hour. Moving on to question 22, it says two solids J and K have the same density, and the question is asking us to complete the table, and it also says include the units for your answers. So if they've got the same density, well, let's first of all write down what the density formula is. So it's mass over volume, and again, if you're wanting to use the triangle, that's what we get. So to work out density, I'm going to use this formula here. So for this value here, it's going to be 48 divided by 8, which gives me an answer of 6. Now it says that the density is the same for J and K, so that's going to be 6. And then to work out the volume, so for this number here, volume equals mass over density. So for this one here, it's going to be 78 divided by 6, which gives me an answer of 13. Now all that's left for me to then do is write down the units. Now the units for the volume is going to be in centimetre cubed. Now looking at the density, it's going to be mass first, and the mass is measured in grams. And that's over the units of the volume, which in this case is centimetre cubed. And there we go. Moving on to question 23, it says the diagram shows a cuboid. The cuboid is enlarged by a scale factor of 4. Work out the dimensions of the enlarged cuboid. So for this, all we need to do is basically multiply each of the lengths by 4. So here, if I do 5.1 times 4, I get an answer of 20.4. If I do 9.4 times 4, I'm going to get an answer of 37.6. And if I do 3.7 times 4, I get an answer of 14.8. So all I then need to do is just transfer those three numbers into the space available. And it doesn't really matter what order you put them in, because it will still produce the same cuboid, or enlarged cuboid in this case. And there we go. Moving on to question 23b, it says how many times bigger is the volume of the enlarged cuboid than the volume of the original? So here, if we work out the new volume, well, it's going to be 20.4 times 37.6 times 14.8, and that gives me an answer of 11352. Oh, let me just write that a little bit neater. Equals 11352.192. And if I work out the old volume using the original numbers, that's going to be 5.1 multiplied by 9.4 multiplied by 3.7, and that comes up to a total of 177.378. Then to work out how many times bigger, I just do the new shape divided by the old shape. So if I divide this calculation together here, that gives me an answer of 64. And again, there are different ways in which you can do this. If you know if you've been taught similar volumes and areas, that we know that if the length scale factor is k, then the area scale factor is going to be k squared, and the volume scale factor is going to be k cubed. Now in this case, the length scale factor equals 4. So k squared is going to be 16 and k cubed is going to be 64, and that also would be a valid way to work out how much bigger the enlarged cuboid is to the original cuboid. Moving on to question 24, it says use trigonometry to work out the length of x. So for this, the first thing you want to do is label the information we've given. So we've got theta, we've got hypotenuse, and I've got the opposite. So knowing we've got O and H, and we've got theta, then the trig ratio I need to use is sine, which is O over H, and then substituting the numbers in, I get sine 72 equals x over 8. So x is going to equal 8 times sine 72. So on the calculator, type that in, I get 7.608452213. And again, you can either, it doesn't mention anything about rounding, so you can write your answer any which way you want. So I would go for 7.6 to 1 decimal place. Moving on to question 25, it says V equals K over H, where K is a constant. Which two statements are correct? Tick 2 boxes. Now for this, doing direct and indirect proportion, the two you want to tick are going to be the two middle two. And again, if you're not sure why, it's a little bit more complicated to go through when explaining this particular question without teaching the whole entire subject. So again, a little reminder that if you're not too sure why this is the case, I strongly recommend you watch my videos on direct and indirect proportion. And again, you can access those videos by clicking on the link that takes you to the contents page of all the videos on 162 Maths. Moving on to question 26, it says, and just zoom out a little bit because I can see this is quite a biggish question. It says that Chris visits a library. He cycles to the library in half an hour at the speed of 12 miles per hour. He stays in the library for 1 hour and then cycles home. The sketched graph represents his visit, and it says work out the speed in miles per hour at which Chris cycles home. So what we need to do is we need to work out the speed. Now speed, as we've already mentioned, is equal to distance divided by time. So I need to work out what distance the library is to Chris's home, and I also need to work out the time that it's taken for this. Now in terms of the time, we can see that the time difference between 10:30 and 11:15, so we know that time is going to equal 45 minutes. And converting that, well, we will convert it in a sec. Now the next thing for me then to do is to work out the distance. Now to work out the distance, I need to use this bit of information here. So it says that in half an hour, traveling at 12 miles per hour, Chris arrives at the library. So to work out the distance, that's going to be speed times time. And so the speed is 12, the time is half an hour, so that's 0.5, so that equals 6 miles. So now I know the distance, I know the time, so now I can work out the speed. So the speed, now remembering the units, we want to work it in miles per hour. So is the time in hours? No, it isn't. So I need to convert this into hours. So 45 minutes is 45 over 60 hours, and which is 0.75 hours. So that's the time I'm going to do. So the distance is 6, which is in miles, which is correct, over 0.75, and type that into my calculator. I get an answer of 8. So the speed is 8 miles per hour. Moving on to question 27, so our last question on this audit. It says the value of a house is 120,000. The value is expected to increase by 5% each year. Work out the expected value after 4 years. Give your answer to 2 significant figures. Now this question here is a compound interest question, and there are several ways in which you could answer this question. Now if you've done compound interest before, then again the formula is the original amount multiplied by the decimal multiplier after the increase to the power of the time. So taking this into consideration, we've got the original amount of the house, which is 120,000, an increase of 5%, so 100% plus 5 is 105%. That as a decimal is 1.05. And then we want to do that to the time, which is 4. And if I type that all into my calculator, 120,000 times 1.05 to the power of 4, I get an answer of 145,860.75 pence. So then from this, I then want to round it 2 significant figures, and the second significant figure refers to 10 thousandths. So it's going to be, the correct answer is 150,000. Now again, if you've done it the more long-winded way, so first of all we've got 120,000, and then we add 10%. So times by 1.1. Sorry, not 5% rather, not 10%. Don't know where I've got that number from. So the first year is going to be 12000 times 1.05, and that comes up to a total of 126000. Then for the second year, I'm going to do 126000 times that by another 5%, and that comes up to 132300. Then the third year, I do 132360 times 1.05, and that comes up to 138915. And then the fourth year, it's going to be 138915 times 1.05, and that comes up to the answer which I got previously, which is 145860.75, and then we just need to round it to two significant figures, in which I get the same answer. And there we go.